And good morning. Welcome to another edition of the Kitchings Table here on Awesome Radio, WBIS 106.9 FM. We are always glad to be with you. I am your host, Earl Kitchings. Joining me this morning again is Miss Ronline Cannady. Ronline, good morning.
Good morning and happy Valentine's Day to all.
Thank you. Happy Valentine's Day to all. Would you please welcome and introduce our guest today?
Yes, we have Mr. Rockman Johnson with us today. And for those that do not know him, he is running for a seat in Jacksonville, Florida for City Council District 14. And he's also an author. So I just want, and radio TV personality. So go ahead, Rockman, and tell the world hello.
Well, first of all, I want to say hello, but I have known Mr. Kitchings all my life because through his mama, we share a mama. So even though we're not related by blood, Mrs. Kitchings was one of my mother's dear friends, and I've known her since I was, as Johnetta Cole would say, knee-high to a duck. And of course, Ronline is, in full disclosure, my cousin who has known me before I knew myself and wiped my little, even though we're close in age, I'm just saying, you know. But I'm so excited to be here. Happy Valentine's Day. And yes, I'm running for City Council District 14. But I'm so glad to be here with you to have this conversation as we talk about not only moving our community, but our society forward.
Well, Rockman, thank you for those kind words. I know my mother is very fond of you as she was of your mother. So thank you. And, I think Ronline understated who you are because you are a lot more than the two things she cited. And I'm not going to go into all the things that I know you have done and all the things you probably are doing, but you are a very, great guy because you've done a lot of things. You've always been involved with so many activities, and you seem to always want to be in that mode of doing something to make a change. And I guess I would call you a change maker.
I appreciate that. I think it stems from family. I come from like you, I come from a family of educators. My mother, my grandmother, aunts and uncles, everybody in the family has in some way, shape or form had to put forth and instilled in us a way to make it forward is through education. And so I went to Ribault here in Jacksonville. I got my undergraduate degrees in communications and political science from Edward Waters, where I'm now a professor. I went to Seton Hall University to get master's degrees in strategic communications and global leadership. And I'm happy to say that I've just completed my studies for a doctorate in urban higher education at Jackson State University, where I am a PhD candidate. So all of those experiences I've had as an award-winning actor and as an author, my book was Book of the Year in the American Library Association in 2021. I've been on Broadway, been on TV, film. I think when I look at my life and the encapsulation of it, I'm a storyteller. And regardless of if I've been a news anchor, award-winning news anchor and reporter, like I said, I've been on stage, film, and TV. I've now transitioned into being in the classroom. But regardless of where I am in my life, it's about telling stories. And if I can bring some light and life to the stories of the human existence, it helps us to be better, to learn what not to do or what to do. And so the fact that I was blessed and given a voice means that, in the words of Miss Dupree from back in the day, the Tom Jordan Morning Show, I got the gift and I got to use it.
There you go. Well, you definitely have a gift. And I will say, like myself, when you've been blessed with numerous gifts, because we all know that if you don't use the gifts you've been blessed with, they go away. But when you've been given multiple and numerous gifts, for those of us who are like you, which I consider myself one, we utilize all the gifts and talents that we've been blessed with and make use of them in many, many ways and spread ourselves not thin, but we're just spread out, all over. And we just do those things that we have a talent and skills and desire to do. So I'm very happy to have you on today. I'm hoping that you'll be blessed to be successful in your run for city council. I'm not going to even go into what our needs are for this city, but I know if you get on the city council, they thought Gary Dennis was a handful. Boy, don't let you get on there, because it's going to be something else. But that just speaks to the level of person you are. And congratulations on your work on your doctorate degree. I know that will happen too. I was wondering, I was asking myself, did Rockmont get his law degree? Because I just felt like that was just one of those degrees that you had. And it's like, if you don't have it, it's like, well, when you gonna get it?
But what's funny is, and the funny part is, I was like, I'm not going to school anymore. Once I got my bachelor's, man, and I was doing TV and did well, I'm like, okay, I'm done. And of course, everybody, and come on, we're from a family of educators, so they like thermometers in our family, right? Everybody got a bunch of degrees, okay? Mm-hmm. And so I was like, I ain't getting no master's. I don't need it. I'm good. And then sometime I had been working, and I had an opportunity, and Seton Hall is one of the top schools in the world. And then I ended up in this program, and I got it. And I was like, okay, I got my master's, both of them. I'm good. I ain't getting no doctorate because I don't need to go to school. Now, mind you, I had taken the LSAT. All right, here's my thing. I wanted to be an attorney, and I'm blessed. I think we all have to look at our villages. And so I was blessed right before. So as you know, I was an elected official before, the youngest in Florida. Mm-hmm. I ran for Soil and Water, and I turned around and ran for the legislature when my term ended. I was about 23 years old, did not win, and I had to kind of reassess my life to see what was next. As you know, I'm an actor and a journalist and a host, and so I had an opportunity. I auditioned for Nickelodeon, and when you're an actor and you're in the business, you audition and you move on to the next thing. So I had taken the LSAT. I did really, really well on the LSAT. I studied. I got like a 164, which is pretty good, right? So I had scholarships, and I started having conversations with my village. I was blessed to know Judge Brian Davis, Judge Henry Adams, Noah Lawrence, A. Wellington Barlow, like attorneys and judges. And I'm like, hey, I got this opportunity. And Nickelodeon came calling. They were like, hey, we want you to do this national show. And I had this quandary. This was back in 2003, somewhere up in there when the Nickelodeon show started. And I'm like, well, do I go to law school or do I go do this show? And 100% of that village said, boy, if you don't go make this money, and they said, law schools have been around for hundreds of years. They ain't going nowhere. You're supposed to go, you'll go. And that was a great decision. It allowed me to set my path on a trajectory of to me, what has been success. And funny enough, as I have sunset my PhD career, and I said, it's called a terminal degree for a reason. It's called a terminal degree because you ain't supposed to go do nothing else. Right. But some of my classmates and I have been talking about trying to get that JD. So right now, I'm gonna just let my brain rest a little bit. But trust me, it's I am a student of the law. I do take some law courses in the 1L group, and so I wanted to know enough to be dangerous.
Okay, well, that leads us to our topic for our show today, which is law and order for us. Law and order for us, because last week, something phenomenal happened here in the state of Florida in the area of law. And we're going to get to that because this has not ever happened before from the academia side and from the law profession side. So we're going to talk about the gentleman who they're now calling the Black Attorney General for America, which is Ben Crump. But before we get to that, Ronline and I started talking about some things as it related to the the court system and who's been in court and who's been on the courts. And we talked about women who have been on the court, because Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson became the first female ever, Black female ever to serve on the Supreme Court, which is that was a milestone and a half, I would say, because no one saw that coming, but yet here it is. And I think she is the conscience of the Supreme Court, because I believe those men on the Supreme Court know that she is kind of a straight arrow straight shooter. She kind of by the book, and there's not many things that, you know, she's not into playing some of the political games that it seems to be happening over the last few years based on who's been in the White House. So we talked about that. So Ronline found something about a lady that goes all the way back to President Lyndon B. Johnson. And, you know, Rockman, the fact that President Johnson doesn't get the due credit that he deserved, because although John F. Kennedy was the person to start the wheels in motions, Lyndon Johnson was the man that got the civil rights and the voting rights. He is the president who signed all of that into law. And he was the man who was, from my humble opinion, fighting for the civil rights and the human rights and the justice for Black Americans in a time when Jim Crow was on its way out, and folks weren't ready for an integrated society. But Ronline, kind of talk about what you found about the judge who he appointed back in the 60s.
All right, so that would be Justices Constance Baker Motley. And when I was reading about her, I just got so filled with joy, and also with heartbreak because of where we are now. You know, from 1966, when she was first appointed, to where we are now with education. And then the idea that she helped end segregation. Those are the cases that she fought for. And, you know, now we're able to go to school. We're able to go to school where we want. And to not know, to have this rise of taking away from our history so that we don't, you know, our history is being suppressed. And so this is why I like this platform in which we're doing today and every Tuesday, is to bring back what our history really is, and to get us back to fighting again, you know, to get us in those trenches and never let up. Because this is what I learned about Justice Baker. She didn't give up, and she did not allow them to say no. And this is why we are here today, being able to have the freedom that we do, the liberty that we do, to be able to get the education. And Rockman, this is what I learned from your mother and your grandmother. It's like, never stop learning. Never stop learning. And when I learned that your mother became a pathologist just so that she can help someone in the family to learn how to speak very well,
Yes.
you know, without that speech impediment. I think about Ms. Gorman today, who gave that speech at the inauguration, you know. So it's like overcoming our shortcomings. You know, we didn't get the things that we needed as we were coming up. And I'm so glad for more people who is like us, that we're able to reach out to, instead of, you know, looking in those yellow pages or whatever, trying to find who, you know, who matches us, who will understand us. And so that leads us back to who we're talking about today, Mr. Kitchens. So go ahead and announce our person for today.
Well, before I announce that person, I just wanted to give some additional background as it related to Black females in the justice and the law industry, because the fact that there are about 3,800 plus judges throughout the United States, about 3,800. Of those 3,800, 70 are Black women. That's about 2%. And when you look at those numbers and the fact that of that number, Ketanji Brown Jackson rose to be the person that the current president selected, because there were a couple of other ladies that were on the short list of being selected as a Supreme Court justice. And it's ironic because when he was in office, President Obama also appointed a female to the Supreme Court. And his former vice president, who is now the president, has appointed a female to the Supreme Court. And it's just interesting to see how all this happens. And in addition to that, in our state government, there are Supreme Courts throughout our states that oversee the laws of the state. And what they basically are there to do is, hear appeals on decisions issued by the lower courts, and then they make rulings for that. Now, most states either have a Supreme Court or Superior Court, but here in the District of Columbia, which is not a state, they have a Superior Court, but that was not really established until 1970.
Yes.
And that Superior Court of the District of Columbia consists of one chief judge and 61 associate judges. And when we did, again, some research, we found that two of the associate chief or chief judges in that are Black females who work in the District of Columbia. And throughout this entire nation, if you remove the District of Columbia from this list, there are only 3 Black women who serve on a state Supreme Court. 3. One of them happens to be in Florida, one happens to be in Georgia, and I think the other one was in Missouri. But I don't think people, really, think about their state having a Supreme Court unless they're in the system and having to go before the state court. And but those facts are part of what we are looking at and bringing to the forefront today, based on it being Black History Month.
Yes.
So and before we move on, I'm gonna just ask Rockman if you would just share with us your thoughts about the fact that you come from a background where you had strong female figures, but
strong women.
To hear that these ladies are in these positions.
Well, and I want to take a moment too, if I may, a moment of personal privilege. I was honored to know Florida's first Black female judge, Judge Marsha Cook. And just a few weeks ago, she lost her battle with cancer.
Okay.
She was appointed by the Bush administration and the George W. Bush administration.
Okay. And
Marsha was just a brilliant jurist, but the first Black female to sit on a federal bench in the state of Florida.
Right.
What do you think about that? And she opened the door. She was a staunch Democrat. She did not pull any punches about what she believed, but she was a true jurist through and through about the law. She lost her battle with cancer. She was only 68 years old, but she opened the door for what is a Ketanji Brown Jackson. And I'm so glad that she got to see Justice Brown Jackson ascend to the bench. I think when you think of Constance Baker Motley, and when you think of these African-American women jurists who, like another Florida resident who came to Florida at the end of her life to live here and was very involved with the community, and that's another attorney, Congresswoman Shirley Chisholm.
Mm-hmm.
When we look at these women, and we have a unique place, which is why I was talking to a colleague on the academic side in the Pacific Northwest on yesterday. And his wife was originally from the Florida area and said, I would never come back. Mm-hmm. And it's so sad to think of, we do have a history of being touched by so many wonderful, magical Black women and men, but specifically women who have fought to move things forward. And it's as much progression as we make. It seems like the regression is just, if not greater.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's unfortunate that we have to go through the cycle of progression, and then that circle goes back to regression, as you stated. And I'm glad you brought up the late Honorable Shirley Chisholm, because before there was a Barack Obama, before there was a Jesse Jackson, before there was anyone else who was
Black. Fannie Lou, can't forget Fannie Lou Hamer.
Fannie Lou. But where I'm going with this is before there was anybody who decided to, who was Black, that decided to run for president.
Yes.
Shirley Chisholm was the first.
Yes.
She was the first. And, uh, she, when I look at Shirley Chisholm sometimes, she reminded me of Cicely Tyson. They had that
Yes.
same kind of look.
Oh, yes.
They had that same kind of look. But Shirley Chisholm was a fireball, and she would not bite her tongue, and she would fight. Coming out of New York, she would fight. She would speak her mind. But when you think about the fact that in the early 70s, here's a Black woman who decided to run for president of the
Yes.
United States before the Geraldine Ferraros and the Hillary Clintons and all the women who ran for president that we have heard about and know of over the last 20, 30 years.
Yes.
Shirley Chisholm was the first Black woman or the first Black person to run for president. And, you got to think about the fact that when she decided to run, it was not too long after President Johnson had signed the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act. It was not that long after that, within a 10-year period. So, she was bold and she was vivacious and she was about getting things done. So,
in her words, unbought and unbossed.
Exactly. That's exactly who she was. So a powerful woman like that. And I'm not sure if she had a law degree, but I would, it seems like most people who serve in Congress do have law degrees. So I would say she was a well-educated woman. I definitely know that.
Yeah.
So to put yourself in a position, say you're running for president at a time when it's like, we barely are getting in some schools now because there's integration. We're barely allowed to go to some schools we were never allowed to go to. And here's this woman saying, well, I'm going to run for president. And it's like, wait a minute. Who do you think you are?
Yeah.
Shirley Chisholm. But I think because it was such an early time in the civil rights time that we knew, for those of us who lived in, we knew about it, but it was like there was a lot of uncertainty because it's like, can we really make that happen? And I think for people my age and a little older, during a time when we saw Shirley Chisholm run for office, then Jesse Jackson, some of us probably believed Jesse had a shot, but a lot of times we say, well, we won't see a Black president in my lifetime. Well, lo and behold, here comes Barack Obama. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, we won't ever see a Black vice president. Lo and behold, comes Kamala Harris. So those things have been knocked down, but there's still a lot of fighting to do.
Absolutely.
Yes. And I want to take this time to recognize Sherry Beasley, who became a Chief Justice for North Carolina. So the pioneers that has come before us, today's history, I'm just so honored that we're talking about it. So go ahead, Mr. Kitchings.
because like I said, Chief Justice Quince here in Florida sits on the state Supreme Court. And like I said, there was also one in Georgia. And it's ironic, especially when we talk about the fact that those are two states in the South. Those are states in the South. I mean, and Georgia, as was Alabama, as was Mississippi, were very staunch segregationist states. I mean, and when you hear the fact that you got these women who have excelled and risen to these occasions to be at the highest level of justice in a state, that is very, very, very powerful. So those things are what's going on in this day and time with these women and what they're doing. So as I mentioned, there are 6 women who serve at the highest level per state, 3 in a state, but the other 3 serve in the District of Columbia. And the fact that the District of Columbia is not a state, but it is a powerful location. It's a powerful city. It's we call it the Chocolate City because it has a large demographics of Black people. So it's almost like that's what's expected to happen in Washington, D.C. You've seen many Black mayors. So it's kind of expected that that happens in that district. And when I looked at the other part of what our show is going to be about today, going from the people who are the women who are on our Supreme Courts by states, and the first ever Supreme Court justice who is a Black female, and going back to what Rockman was saying about going to law school, once upon a time there were 17 Black law schools at Black colleges. 17. Today there are only 6. There are only 6. And we have lost 11 colleges of law and they've been eliminated for many reasons, I suppose. I know FAMU, when I was growing up, had a school of law. It went away, but now it's back. And when we talk about the places that offered law schools or paralegal programs, the District of Columbia had 3, Texas had 3, Florida had 2, Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi had 2, and then North Carolina and 2 other states had 1. But when we get to these 6, and of the 6, the top law school, according to hbcucareers.com, the top law school in America is Howard University.
Yes.
Howard University. And many people may not know this, and I'm not sure if I'm gonna frame this right, and Rockman, you correct me, but we know about state universities and colleges. We know we have state universities and colleges and private universities and private colleges, but do people really know that Howard University is a federal university? Because
you don't know it. Yep.
because it sits in the District of Columbia. It is private, but it gets its funding. It gets a lot of its funding from the federal government. And I don't know if a lot of people really know and realize that.
Yep.
So any thoughts on that, Rockman?
Well, I think we have to be in a place where, and I hope I'm not stealing your thunder, and if I am, just to be quiet. We have to be in a space to create more law schools, and you already know about St. Thomas Law School here in Florida, which will now
we're going to talk about that.
Okay, so I won't say it.
Okay,
but the fact that we are creating where it hasn't been, and the fact that FAMU, quote unquote, lost the law school.
Right.
They had to come up with an innovative way. When they lost it, it was because somebody else wanted it. They acted as if FAMU did something wrong, but it's like, well, we can't have 2 in the same space, but you wouldn't let us in the other one. So we had to create one for ourselves.
Right.
And so I think what it means in our space and what we're doing right now is that we have to get into those spaces and open the doors like our guest or your guest today is going to do or is doing. We have to find our way wherever it takes. I mean, there are innovative opportunities. Look, Kim Kardashian is in law school, right? One of the schools in California, and I want to say it's called, I forgot the name of the school. There are schools now that allow law students to go online with an accredited law degree, and it ain't a bad degree. It's something you can really learn. There's schools, President Obama, who of course is a brilliant jurist, created this opportunity that if you go year round, there are law schools that you can finish in 2 years, as opposed to going to 3 with the summers, and then you can end up in a clerkship. So it's important. I'm not saying everybody needs to be a lawyer, and certainly everybody who is an attorney doesn't have to be a practicing attorney. But in order for us to make the significant change that we need to, you got to know how to play the game.
And you're so right about that. So creating and bringing forth new and extending academia for our schools is important. Behind Howard University, the other schools that have law schools, Texas Southern University in Baton Rouge. We already said Florida A&M, North Carolina Central, and the University of the District of Columbia. And As we get ready to go into our pantry section, we want to let everyone know that this is the Kitchings Table here on WBIS 106.9 FM, Awesome Radio. You can catch us on Facebook Live, YouTube, Roku TV, and GPAC 23. Again, we always like to thank the staff and management here at Awesome Radio for making this opportunity available for us. When we talk about the law schools, we're going back to talking about law schools. Those 6 schools, those 6 Black colleges have law schools. Of those 6, only 2 of them are named in honor of an individual. The University of the District of Columbia has the David A. Clark School of Law. Now, I went on to find out who Mr. Clark was. He was an American civil rights worker, attorney, politician, and was elected to the original members of the Council of the District of Columbia. He was not an African American, but because he did some things that were so powerful at his time, because once upon a time, the University of District of Columbia was not always a white university. It transcended into that, but he made an impact, and they named the school after him. The other school, Texas Southern, their School of Law is named the Thurgood Marshall School of Law. And we all know that Thurgood Marshall was the first Black Supreme Court justice. And at this School of Law at Texas Southern University, they offer a Juris Doctor and a Master of Law degrees at that university. So in our pantry section today, we want to talk about this next wave. And to see something like this happen again in your lifetime, because in our lifetimes, we've seen iconic people and seen iconic things happen. And this is one of those iconic things that we are witnessing in real time. So our pantry section today is going to talk about Mr. Attorney Ben Crump, Benjamin L. Crump, Esquire. And he's been referred to as Black America's Attorney General. Some of his honors include the listed among the most influential people of 2021 by Time 100, Ebony Magazine's powerful 100 most influential African Americans, and the National Trial Lawyers' top 100 lawyers are some of the honors. So why are we talking about Benjamin L. Crump, Attorney Crump, the man you have probably seen on TV over the last few years, making pleas, fighting for people's rights, fighting for injustices? It's because those things have led St. Thomas University College of Law down in the Miami area of Florida to create the Benjamin L. Crump Center for Social Justice.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know it's just me clapping, but we got to give his brother a round of applause, man.
Yeah.
Woo!
And you know, in looking at the information about this, so I'm sure somebody might say, well, you said it was going to be a college of law. Well, let me share how this is going to work. So they created this Center for Social Justice in his name. And they said, well, it will become the Benjamin L. Crump College of Law once $10 million have been raised. And I was telling Ronline, I said, well, all he's got to do is win one of these next cases, or the people he's helped or the people who support him, that $10 million won't be a hard mark to hit. What do you think about that?
Oh, absolutely. I don't know, Ronline, if you want me to jump in on it, but I mean, think about it. And if I think I read correctly, there are some people, and I've read this in a report. This just came out. So I want to say this is last week, and he can correct me, but T.D. Jakes, George Clinton, Will Smith have either raised or committed to raise $10 million for the new institution. And then I want to quote this. I'm a journalist by trade. So, you know, I spent 20 years as an anchor reporter. Yep. So the anchor comes out of me still. But according to, and this is one of the articles, according to Will Smith, he said, Ben has been an absolutely spectacular friend and guide. And that's the way that it should be. It's important for me to be here with him in this space. There are very few people in this world who has a heart like his. And that is from Will Smith. He said, "It's my deepest honor and pleasure to be here and support someone in this space." And so he, TD Jakes, George Clinton, and so many others have committed the $10 million. So it's a go. It's a go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you know, when they made the announcement down at St. Thomas, out of nowhere, Will Smith appeared on stage with Attorney Crump and spoke about who he was and his support of Ben Crump. And if you understand anything about how people do things in a very low-key manner, him showing up wasn't just because, you know, he thinks Ben Crump is a good guy. That was his way of letting folks know, okay, number one, I support this guy, and I'm a visibly let you see me supporting this guy. But without saying I'm writing a check to him for this College of Law, that was another way of him letting folks know that, well, if Will Smith is doing this, obviously Will Smith is investing in this College of Law. And again, as you already said, there are other individuals who are going to make their monetary gifts to this college. So the value of this and the importance of this is not a Black college. This is not an HBCU. St. Thomas University is not an HBCU. And for them to name the law school, and this will be only the second time in the history of this country that a law school is named for an African-American individual, for them to want to name this College of Law in his honor speaks volumes about the man, the lawyer, and what he has been doing. Because what they say about this College of Law is that it's one of the most diverse access law schools in America. This law school is committed to legal advocacy, education, and dialogue, and you know, is to promote the dignity of every human being. Yes. And that's who Ben Crump is. He's about serving people. And Ronline, you were telling me last night about he's got a documentary.
Yes, he has a documentary, and in that documentary, it talks about the cases dealing with George Floyd and what that case meant to him, the Breonna Taylors, you know. And as I was sharing with you, you were asking me, you know, even though he's gotten money for these cases, you know, how do I think that he felt in that documentary, based on what he was sharing? And you know, his thing is, I don't have enough time. You know, my time is running out, and there's so many things that are happening. So it's like he wished he could just clone himself. He didn't say that, but you know, that's I remember being in that space myself, to wherein it's like, okay, I'm on to something good. And being on to something good, it's like, okay, I'm just one person. So what can I do? Do I take the time to train people, or, you know, whatever it may be? In this case, he's wishing that more and more people can get out there and do the things that he does, you know, to be able to help every family. He said that he gets over 500 phone calls a day, you know. So about senseless things that has happened to family members or what have you. So when we're talking about what's happening with the school, as you say, it's a non-HBCU, who, and I don't remember what the man's name is, but what he said was, you know, he's non-African American. What he said was, it's just time, you know. And the things that he's done, his legacy speaks for itself. And he's come out the gate from he and his friends, Mr. Park, where they decided that it wasn't no need to try to take the route of getting in someone else's law practice. You know, they just needed to form one of their own because of what they wanted to do. They wanted to help people. They saw things that were happening around them, and they chose the trial lawyer thing for accidents and wrongful deaths, so that they could raise the money needed to take care of those cases, um, to take care of those cases that needs additional money. And I heard someone was interviewing him and saying that, you know, you take on these cases because of the money that you make from it or whatever. But for anyone who has worked in law, they know that you're giving your time away, as well as it takes a lot of money to bring these cases to justice, you know, on the behind the scenes things. So if it's medical records involved, you have to pay for that. You know, all of these services that brings a case together. So I'm so thankful for what he has been, before he got to where the fame that he has gotten now. And when I say fame, I mean the awareness, because his footprint is reaching in so many places. When he was standing with Al Sharpton and the George Floyd killing, you know, to talk about how long that man was standing on his neck, you know, and letting us know that we can't sit on this. And I'm thankful that the one thing that he said, it was like he needs to go for the money to make that impact. Because when you get done paying out to these families the kind of money that has to be paid out in order for them to feel it, and that was his thing, you know, they have to feel it, and that's the only way this is going to stop. They have to feel it. So I just want to turn that back over to you, Mr. Kitchens, because you're so right about his footprint, and I'm so happy to be talking about this today.
I don't know if we lost Rockman or not, but oh, there he is. Okay, so Rockman, we got about 5 minutes left here before we wrap everything up. Give us your thoughts about the fact that this college has made the decision to name this college of law. It'll be the first time ever that a law school has been named after a Black attorney, not a Supreme Court justice, but a Black attorney. Give us your thoughts and feelings.
First time of a Black practicing attorney. I haven't, when I was anchoring the news in Tallahassee, I'm so glad, Ronline, you brought up Daryl Parks. Parks and Crump struck fear in the hearts of everybody in Tallahassee and across the state. Those guys were just, and continue to be, great, brilliant legal eagles. I have to joke about it. Daryl's an alpha and Ben is an omega. I'm a kappa. So every time we would see each other, we have our little Greek back and forth. But those guys are just amazing. I've had great conversations with Ben, interviewed him over the years, and there is no other person who is as deserving as him. I think he follows, even though, Ronline, you said it earlier about going after the money. I had the great opportunity to work for a radio company that was owned by the late, great Johnny Cochran. And I had a chance to meet Mr. Cochran and have conversations with him. And I will say, while he understood the necessity of what he had to do as an attorney, he also wanted he understood the need for money, for wealth, for that stuff to come in. I'm not saying one is better than the other, but to me, I believe that Ben kind of let all the money stuff go so he could focus on fighting for people that were underserved, which is kind of one of the reasons you have the law. While Attorney Cochran did do some great things during his lifetime, it just seems like Ben is in this space of altruism, right? He's not looking for any accolades. He's not looking for any money. I have a dear friend that's one of the associates that works for Ben Crump, and he just continues to push the envelope. If you don't follow his social media, Ben Crump Law, I do. And like I said, I'm happy to have a personal relationship with him, but following his social media, he keeps us abreast of stuff that we don't even know about. Mm-hmm. Right? Of one of my dear friends, Mark Lamont Hill, Dr. Mark Lamont Hill, who is a professor, formerly the anchor on Black News Channel, as well as a professor up at Temple University, wrote a book called Seen Unseen last year. And he talked in the book about, and I taught a course on the book, right, at Edward Waters. And one of the things we talked about in this book is about the social activism in the social media age. And so in this, the things that Attorney Crump is talking about have not just started happening.
Mm-hmm.
We're just starting to see them, right? Due to the emergence of social media and camera phones and us being able to instantly stop and capture the moment, body cams and transparency. And so what he's done in his way is taken what has become the zeitgeist of where we are and allowed the world to see the atrocities and injustices that have happened. And he's putting a voice to it. Trust and believe. There are people who want Ben Crump to do nothing but sit down and shut up. Go win some cases. I don't know this for sure, but I'm sure in my thought process that someone has said, you know, Ben, we're going to give you this case. Please go be quiet. But he can't. Maya Angelou once said, and I was privileged to know her, and you all know the story and know the book, Why Does the Caged Bird Sing? And that was the question. And she says in the book, I know why the caged bird sings. So the question is, why does the caged bird sing? Because it has to. Why does Ben Crump do what he does? Not because he's going to get money, not because he's going to get accolades. It's because he has to. And that's why we need to celebrate him, the only practicing attorney in the U.S. to have a law school named in his honor. And again, no better person than Ben.
Yes. Yes.
Well, you both make very eloquent points. And to go back to the Maya Angelou, why does the caged bird sing? You said because it has to, and you mentioned Ben Crump, and I would just parallel with saying, well, that's why Dr. Martin Luther King did what he did, because he had to. And if we didn't have a Dr. Martin Luther King, what would this country look like? What would it feel like? What would it be? There would not be a law school named after Benjamin L. Crump at St. Thomas University, because the laws or the people of this land would have been minimizing people who look like the three of us and keeping us from doing what has happened. But in his infinite wisdom and his infinite direction, the Almighty has put that on Ben Crump. That's what he gave him to do, just like he gives us all something to do. And that's what Ben Crump is doing. And don't worry, like you said, don't worry about the money. It'll come, but you go out here and do that work. And he's doing it. And congratulations to him. I hope that he continues to do the work. I hope that he and his family continue to stay safe and blessed. And I hope that there are some young, aspiring attorneys, some young, aspiring students who want to go into law school, who, when they ask him, well, who's your role model, or who are you wanting to be like? And the first name that comes out of their mouth will be Benjamin Crump. I hope that's where they take it, because he is definitely that role model, and there's no pretentiousness about him. He is just out here trying to get it done. And I'm gonna close with this. He is currently out in Houston, Texas, because they're saying about 32 people have died in the Harris County jail system out there. Black people have died in the in jail. They've just died. And he's like, that's like 2 people a month dying in jail. So he's out there again on the front line, making a difference. And, you know, as they say, calling somebody out for something that's wrong. And when the injustices stop, I guess Rockmont, he will sit down and be quiet. But we all know that injustice will never stop.
You know what? I gotta say, Coach, I gotta push back against you a little bit, and I'm gonna say,
no problem.
And maybe I'm being pie in the sky or you know, too optimistic, but I believe that perpetual optimism is a force multiplier, and I believe that in our lifetime that we will see not just equality, but most important, equity. There will be equity for everybody. I believe that injustice will go away, and we can do it if we take steps toward ensuring that people are in leadership who understand that everybody has a voice, no matter what their sexual identity or orientation, religion, race, creed, color, what they like to eat, whatever it is. People are people, and I believe that we have the opportunity to do that. Now, are we gonna all get on board and do it? Maybe, maybe not. But I'm just that radical and just that crazy enough to believe that it with our work is possible.
Well, I'm not going to disagree with you. I may not get there with you, but you go forward and keep pushing that envelope and make that happen in your lifetime. In case I don't make it there with you, because we have to have people to continue, as the late Congressman John Lewis said, get into good trouble, fight the good fight. So I'm going to leave that on your shoulders, Rockman, to keep making that happen, and you turning some students into believers and optimistic, progressive individuals who want change to happen. All right.
Thank you.
All right. So that's going to do it for us today here on the Kitchings Table. Hope you enjoyed it. Until next Tuesday, we'd like to thank you for joining us here on Awesome Radio, WBISLP 106.9 FM. And until then, I'm for Ronline, Cannady, and for future councilman, I'm going to go ahead and speak it into existence, Rockman Johnson. I'm Earl Kitchings saying, hey, have a great week. And as always, go do something good for somebody else. Take care, everybody.
Bye.